What's going on, Nasteey Nation? It's Nasteey, and in today's video I'll be going over my top 10 support champions that you should one-trick. One-tricks are very unique in this game in the sense that it can allow you to perfect a champion so much to the point that you have an advantage over any other player in the game simply because you have a better understanding of your champion than they do. One-tricking isn't necessarily something that I would personally recommend, but there are a lot of people out there that one-trick champions and they are very successful with it. So if you are looking for a champion to one-trick in the support role, this is going to be the video for you. If you would like a chance to win a Spirit Blossom Bane code, then all you need to do is leave a like on the video, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel, and drop a comment down below letting me know what region you're in. Best of luck in the giveaway and enjoy the video. Do keep in mind that the champions I have on this list are in no particular order, but starting off at number 10, I have Zilean. I find Zilean to be actually a pretty strong and underrated champion in solo queue, but for some reason the champion just isn't all that much played. For some reason people don't tend to like the playstyle of the champion, or they don't think that the champion has all that much carry potential, and honestly I kind of disagree with that. I think that the champion has a lot of CC, the revive that you get from his ultimate is extremely strong. Overall, this champion can offer a lot to a team, he just hasn't really clicked yet in solo queue, and people haven't quite picked him up. For example, at the time of recording this video, I think that Zilean has one of the highest win rates out of all support champions, but his play rate is one of the lowest out of all support champions. I don't quite understand why this is the case for Zilean, but what this does mean is that players who pick up Zilean and start one-tricking him in solo queue are going to have a huge advantage over everybody else. Just because his pick rate is so low, that means that a lot of players don't quite understand what the champion does or how to properly play against the champion. So if you put the time into playing this champion and practicing Zilean, then you're going to be able to do a lot of things that the enemy is just not going to see coming. The next champion I have on my list is going to be Brand. I think that when it comes to Brand and other AP champions, one-tricking them in lower elo is definitely going to be a little bit more effective in comparison to one-tricking them in higher ranks, but as a whole I think that if you were to one-trick an AP support, Brand would probably be the best pick. I think that when it comes to looking at how difficult Brand is to play as a champion, he's actually pretty straightforward, and that's not something that you usually want to see in a one-trick. Typically when you're one-tricking a champion, you'd like to play a champion that is fairly difficult, that way you can practice them and over time the time that you put into that champion will pay off. And even though Brand looks simple at his core, he actually is a little bit more difficult than you would imagine. His abilities are pretty straightforward, but how you land these abilities, the proper order to land these abilities in different situations, and just making sure that you can position well enough in team fights in order to get all these abilities off before you die, it can all be very tricky when you put all of this together. So again, overall I think Brand is a little bit more difficult than people would imagine, and I think investing time into this champion could really pay off for someone who wants to one-trick an AP support. The next champion I have on my list is Morgana, and I think that some people seeing me put Morgana on this list are going to be a little bit confused because Morgana isn't typically a champion that you one-trick because she's not typically a champion that you blind pick. Morgana more times than not is a champion that you're looking to pick when trying to counter pick an enemy champion like a Thresh or a Blitzcrank or just something with a lot of heavy CC. However, if you are one-tricking Morgana, what that means is you're going to immediately eliminate a lot of these really tough matchups that you may run into. If you're one-tricking someone like Zilean or Brand, then the enemy team can very easily pick something like the Thresh or the Blitzcrank and hard counter you. If you're one-tricking Morgana, you'll never have to run into these problems, and this could be really beneficial, especially if you're a player like myself who really struggles in these matchups. Personally, I like to ban Thresh in just about every single game that I play. However, if I were to just one-trick Morgana, I would never have to ban Thresh because I would hard counter pick him every single game. I think Morgana can also be a little difficult at times, even though she's a pretty straightforward and simple champion. Getting used to landing her Qs efficiently, getting used to making sure that you're black shielding on time, and also making sure that you're utilizing her ultimate correctly. All of these things can be fairly difficult, and one-tricking a champion like Morgana will allow you to work on these things over time. Next up on my list, I have Rakan, and I think that a lot of people who saw my channel at one point in time actually thought I was a Rakan one-trick, and I've never really one-tricked a champion, but if I were to one-trick a champion, I might very well consider Rakan to be that pick. Rakan is a very difficult champion. He's probably one of the more difficult support champions that we have in the game. Investing a lot of time into this champion is going to allow you to learn how to efficiently peel and engage and overall just survive a lot more. Rakan is one of the only support champions in the entire game who is meant to be an engaged support, but at the same time he isn't also a tank at the same time. Champions like Alistar and Leona who are supposed to engage but at the same time they're very tanky, so it's not quite a problem. Rakan on the other hand has that problem of having to engage but then also survive afterwards. A lot of beginner Rakan players are going to struggle in this area, but if you one-trick Rakan, you're going to be able to pull this off extremely easily. Next up on the list I have Sona, and I think that Enchantress supports as a whole tend to be a little bit more simple and straightforward, and it's for that reason that Enchantress supports aren't usually the best to one-trick. They're very one-dimensional and pretty much anybody can pick them up. You might even see some players who are auto-filled support playing Enchantress supports just because of how simple they are. However, Sona on the other hand is a champion I don't personally play, even though I play a lot of Enchantress supports, and that's because I find Sona to be a little bit more difficult than the other Enchantress supports. It's also for this reason that I think one-tricking her could make a big difference, because the more time that you're able to invest into Sona, the better you're going to be able to play her. I would say that by far the trickiest part about Sona has nothing to do with poking down your enemy in lane or laning ultimates. It just has to do with making sure that you're utilizing your passive as much as possible. On top of that, Sona also has a lot of damage output in comparison to other Enchantress supports, so just being able to do more damage in comparison to these champions is going to make it so that you have a lot easier time when it comes to carrying games in the support role as an Enchantress support, and it's for all of these reasons that I think that Sona makes a very good champion to one-trick in the support role. Now up next on the list I have Nami, and like I was just saying, I don't think Enchantress supports are all that great to one-trick, but if you were to one-trick an Enchantress support, I think Sona and Nami are probably going to be your best go-tos. Nami doesn't quite provide the same damage output that Sona has, however she has the same difficulty, I would say, in the sense that laning her Q and her R can be fairly difficult things to do. If you just look at her W and her E, they're pretty straightforward abilities. You kind of just spam those throughout the game on your ADC, but when it comes to her Q and her R, using those abilities efficiently is going to show a huge difference between a good Nami player and a bad Nami player. If you were to one-trick Nami, you'd be able to land these abilities like it's no problem, and you'd thus be able to carry your games and have a much bigger impact in your games in comparison to a beginner Nami player. Up next on the list I have Bard, and even though the champions on this list aren't in any particular order, I would have to say that I highly recommend one-tricking Bard in comparison to some of the other supports on this list. Bard is one of the most difficult champions in the entire game, not just in the support role, and playing him efficiently is going to take a lot of time and a lot of practice. He's a very heavy skill shot reliant champion. You're going to have to be able to land these very tricky Qs and very tricky ultimates if you're going to want to have a large impact in your games. And that's why I think one-tricking this champion, putting a lot of time into this champion, getting a good feel for how to layer your ultimate with your Q, getting a good feel for how to land your ultimate from a further distance in comparison to just relying on it being used from a close distance, all these things are going to be very difficult, but they're going to be very easy for champions to one-trick Bard and put the time in to learn this champion. Even though Bard is a really strong pick in the meta right now, I think he's going to continue to be a strong pick even if he is eventually nerfed, because his kit just allows you to make so many plays and have such a large impact in your games. Up next on the list I have Thresh, and again, even though these champions aren't in any particular order, just like Bard, Thresh is one of the more difficult champions in the entire game, not just in the support role. You can see a huge difference with this champion when it comes to seeing him played in lower ranks in comparison to higher ranks, and you can also see a huge difference in this champion when you see players who are just learning him in comparison to players who have played him a long time. The win rate jumps up a lot in both of these categories, and it just goes to show that the more time that you put into this game and the more time that you put into playing Thresh, the larger impact that you're going to have. In the big picture, being able to carry games from the support role often boils down to how often you are able to land your abilities, and if you're able to land hooks as Thresh, reposition your allies with your W, peel off enemies with your E and your ultimate, you're going to be able to have a large impact in your games, and it's going to be a breeze winning games from the support role as Thresh. Next up on the list I have Pike, and Pike is a very similar champion to Sona in the sense that both of these champions are really good champions, but at the same time they're champions I haven't quite picked up yet because I do find them fairly difficult to do so. With that being said, once again, that just makes a lot of sense as to why you would want to one-trick these champions, because difficult champions that make it so that putting time into the champion and practicing this champion is going to often pay off for you. Pike can be a very frustrating champion to play up against, but he is very simple to shut down because of how squishy he is. He runs into the same problem that Rakan has in the sense that he's an assassin, but he's also a lot more squishy than you would expect. Pike may be a very frustrating champion to play up against, but at his core, he is very easy to counter due to how squishy he is and how easily you can kill him. It's going to take a lot of practice on this champion to get used to how to efficiently go in, assassinate your enemy, and still manage to get out. There's a big reason as to why you see a lot of Pike one-tricks in higher elos, but you don't see a lot in lower elos, and that's because the players who invest time into this champion are having a lot of success and ranking up in the ladder. And finally, the last support champion that I would recommend you one-trick is Alistar. I think that Alistar has a very simple core mechanic with his knockup, and it does take a little bit of practice to get used to, but that's not what makes him a really good champion to one-trick. On top of his very one simple combo, there's a lot of other things that you can do as Alistar to increase your CC chain or in order to engage more efficiently. Pretty much any player who has put a couple games into Alistar can play him at a very simple level, but the players who are able to practice this this champion, put the time in on this champion, are going to be able to do a lot more fancy things, including flash combos, CC layering, and just overall having a bigger impact in your game because you're able to peel and engage a lot more efficiently. Well, alright then, ladies and gentlemen, that should just about wrap up the end of this video. I hope you guys did go on to enjoy it and find it helpful. Again, if you did, be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already, and feel free to comment down below letting me know whether or not you agreed with the champions that I had on this list, or if you disagreed with the champions I had on my list. I look forward to reading all your comments down below and seeing what you guys all had to say about it. Anyways, that should just about do it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching to the end. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.